So we know that to become citizens of the kingdom of heaven, we need to exchange heritages. We need to put the flesh and its way of being in full submission to the heritage of the Spirit, which allows us to be children of God and to become heirs and citizens of the kingdom. The question is, how is that accomplished? How do we take on the Spirit? How do we lay aside the heritage of the flesh? Now, there's a specific answer that we're going to arrive at soon, but to understand that answer, we need to look at how Jesus shows us the way that he puts flesh in submission to the Spirit and to God's will. Over the next several days, we'll be looking at exactly that. Jesus' approach to the cross, the ultimate submission of the flesh to the will of God, and how our response to the cross is key to adopting the spiritual heritage that gives us access to the kingdom. All four Gospels record a moment in Jesus' life where he is about to face a betrayal that will ultimately lead to his crucifixion. The moment takes place in a garden, and we find Jesus in prayer over what he knows is about to happen. Now, Mark tells us that Jesus approaches this time of prayer in great sorrow. He specifically tells Peter, James, and John, "My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch." Then Jesus prays this prayer. He says, "Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will." Matthew and Luke record very similar words about Jesus submitting to the will of God, and Luke tells us that an angel attends Jesus. But even still, this moment is agonizing for him, and his earnest prayer is so fervent that drops of sweat, like blood, form as he prays. Clearly, the knowledge of the death that he was about to face, the task he had before him, was agonizing, emotionally and spiritually traumatic. Which is why we should be in awe of the resolve he shows after this time of prayer. When Judas, the disciple who betrayed Jesus, shows up with a crowd of soldiers, Jewish priests, and Pharisees, there is not a moment of resistance on Jesus' part. In fact, when his disciples decide that it's time to draw swords and strike off an ear, Jesus tells them this: "Put your sword into its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me?" Jesus, who has prayed fervently that this same cup might pass, that he doesn't have to partake in it, doesn't decide to forego the cup, because it's clear that the answer was that the cup, the cross that Jesus was about to face, was the will of God. No matter what his flesh wanted, the will of God was more important. In agony, even before he faces the mockery of the crowds, in turmoil, even before he faces being flogged by the Romans, in pain, even before he arrives at the cross, Jesus goes to face his death. Tomorrow we'll continue to look at Jesus' response to suffering and how his motivation toward that suffering is key to our understanding of life in the Spirit. I love you, and I pray today that you will find victory in the Spirit over the flesh.